we have VTuber drama with Ludwig, and this is about Ludwig debuting as a VTuber. Yes, this did happen. So Ludwig had his debut stream, and he wrote, "Happy to debut." And as we see, some snippets of his VTuber model. All the toggles are so funny. He's got lore too. Name Ludwig, pronounce Ludwig. Age mid-20s, cannot age past this. Birthday, height, race sometimes, languages, English, Japanese. And okay, so from my understanding, Ludwig lost a bet and had to debut as a VTuber model as a result, and that this was like 2 or 3 years in the cooking. And he has debuted. But as you can see here in the comment section, a lot of people be loving it. You know, Shy Lily is vouching for it, Onigiri, Fifi, Emily, like they all hyping up the debut. But a lot of people are also mad, various reasons. So we have a post like this. They wrote, you know, every time I see a VTuber model being given to a Twitch streamer and they don't do anything with it, it reminds me of Rainbow Fish. People not understanding what made them unique, so they give pieces of themselves away, not knowing the history or care of those who wore the scales. I get what Mousy and these streamers are trying to do to make VTubers seem less weird and accepted so the Twitch gods can stop swinging the ban hammer, yada yada. But if I wanted to be accepted, I would have become a functional member of society and stuck with my IRL job only. That is one sentiment that it feels like, I guess, Ludwig's VTuber has a big lack of care in the model, design of the model, etc. I guess VTubers should stay an ostracized chunk of society. And then here's another take where they writes, the amount of VTubers cheering this saddens me. We need to gatekeep against people that would bastardize a medium. And there's a bunch of other people with kind of similar sentiments. I just didn't grab a screenshot of this, but other people were also upset that he got a VTuber model and people were saying that it's gonna collect dust because he's not gonna use it. So those are kind of like the takes that a lot of people kind of have. In my personal opinion, right, I can see both sides of it. I get it. VTubing is a much more niche thing. You will get hate and judgment for being a VTuber that you will not receive for being a cam streamer. I would say in general, if you are a content creator, you are going to receive hate and judgment just for being a content creator. But VTubers receive extra hate for being a 2D or 3D anime character instead of just being a cam streamer. So there is extra hate and judgment that comes with it. And I can empathize with the fact that, hey, it can probably feel unfair that here comes along this big creator Ludwig, ho ho, he's been a cam streamer since the beginning of eternity, and he grabbed this VTuber model, got a VTuber model made for shits and giggles because he lost a bet, and he can walk away from being a VTuber when it becomes not popular. That he can step away from it, go back to his on-cam Ludwig persona, and reap in the rewards and benefits from that, and basically shed the VTuber skin when it no longer benefits him. I can see that frustration if you are a VTuber who, I guess, doesn't have the luxury of being a cam streamer. I would also argue on the flip side, like if you are a VTuber, nothing is also technically stopping you from being a cam streamer and joining the normie group of being cam streamers, I suppose, right? But I do get, you know, like you chose to be a VTuber. This is your like brand, your identity is this VTuber model and this being a VTuber. So maybe it doesn't have like the same vibe. Like you can't have the same necessarily identity if you stepped away and used a camera. But in my personal opinion, Ludwig is a content creator, and within your content as a content creator, you are entitled to do whatever you please in your content. You can do what you want, wear what you want, as long as you're within TOS of the platform you're on, obviously, right? You're entitled to do whatever you please in your content, whatever you see fit in your content journey, as long as it's relatively appropriate, right? And you're not harming anybody. But also for me, my other opinion is, so what if he makes a VTuber model and decides not to use it later? Him getting this VTuber model is so beneficial for the artists that were involved, right? He has a rigger and he has an actual artist, the one that made the model. Sailor Twift is the artist for the VTuber model, and they wrote, "Thank you everybody for all the compliments on Ludwig's VTuber model. I was being serious that I'm 7 months pregnant right now and still trying to buy everything I need. So if anybody is interested in some quick art like emotes, proof pics, etc., please DM me." And Ludwig said, "You are the GOAT." But yeah, like multiple artists that were involved with the making of Ludwig's VTuber model got credit and a lot of exposure, right? I don't believe in paying for exposure, so it's not that. I am extremely certain that all of these artists involved were paid. Yeah, so the illustration was made by Sailor Twift. The Live 2D was made by Atsuki Enma. I guess Iron Vortex was the production team for it, but a lot of people were involved for this that got paid. And as a result, they're gonna get a lot of exposure because they're working with such a big creator that also has a much larger audience. His audience is not just VTubers, but just a larger audience in general. So it will allow this artist to access a different audience than they maybe normally would have if they typically work with like VTubers, right? Because you just get a bigger audience when you work with like a slightly adjacent creator to your audience. So I personally think that it doesn't seem like any harm was done by him becoming a VTuber. He didn't hurt anybody. He hired and paid a bunch of artists fairly. When you buy things, you're entitled to use it whenever you please, right? Like the way I look at it is like this is kind of the same thing as people who buy like a piano and guitar because they want to start learning at instruments because maybe you bought it because you thought it was cool. Maybe you didn't really care about music, but you just wanted to seem cool. Or maybe you did care about music, but you paid for it with your hard-earned money and you maybe used it for a little bit and now it sits in the corner of your room collecting dust because you lost interest. I don't really think it's bad that you stop playing the piano, but you still own a piano. I don't think it's bad you bought a guitar, but you stopped playing the guitar. As much as I don't really think it's bad that he bought a VTuber model that he paid all the artists fairly for and used it, and maybe potentially might not have very much intention of using it very much in the future because everybody along the way got paid fairly. Tyler, maybe I'm understanding this wrong, but it seems to be more of a situation that benefited artists and riggers and gave them jobs rather than did any real harm. Sure, he has the luxury of just walking away from VTubing and that might frustrate people, but they should acknowledge that it did good for the artists in the community. That's my personal take. You're entitled to buy whatever you want as long as you pay for it fairly with your own money that didn't hurt anybody along the way. Use it for whatever you would like to use it for, and if you don't want to use it later, it's fine. Yeah, that's a big thing. It would definitely be very harmful if he was mocking VTubers using a VTuber model trash, right? Which, in my opinion, it doesn't feel like that was the case at all. This is a post that I really do agree with. This was posted by Emperor VT or MP writing, loses bet, follows up on said bet, sets up what most people would see as a VTuber debut with lore, model, and info that was clearly well researched, introduces fan base to VTubers and how cool they could be. I generally cannot see why people are angry, beneficial for VTubers, and it was really fun. But again, we have other opinions. Like this person writes, there has never been a hobby that has been improved by receiving a wider audience. Look what's happening with anime Twitter and people who started watching in 2020, calling people that watched a well-liked anime PDF files a week ago. And MP writes, having a niche audience comes with the same problems as an audience of a larger size. Every community is bound to have its problems. Doesn't mean we need to lock people out from wanting to try it themselves. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this themselves. And Danny writes, his model is so well done, I absolutely love it. Plus, the P toggle is so good. I love all the efforts that went into this. There's no valid reason to get angry about it. And MP writes, people want to lock a community when other people join it. I would barely get it if it was way more niche, but VTubing is essentially mainstream now. The community has grown fast in the years it's come to fruition. And this person writes, hopefully this is a bit more nuanced, but I don't think people inherently have a problem with those wanting to embrace the genre. I think it is a difference of hobbyist and tourist. One embrace the other sightsees, but claims the hobby as their own and therefore demands change. And MP writes, I think a lot of people miss the context of this being a bet with Iron Mouse as well. I'm sure if this is purely a one-off and we won't see it, but I'm not judging if we do otherwise. I hope my explanation comes off the way I intend, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be either a VTuber or somebody who is deep within the VTuber community and be upset that VTubers are not more mainstream and that like VTubing sometimes gets ostracized, right? I do not think it's fair to bully people just because they're VTubers, right? Like, if you don't get it, you don't get it, but let people just do their thing as long as they're minding their own business. But at the same time, then, you can't be upset that VTubing in a more niche scenario sometimes receives more backlash and stuff from people who don't understand, and also be mad that this more mainstream creator who, in light fun, had a bet with a VTuber, lost the bet, and now has to become a VTuber, and in the process has exposed VTubing to a more mainstream audience, right? You can't have both. So yeah, that's kind of my point, right? Like, I feel like a lot of people wanted VTubing to be more mainstream, to be more accepted by the community. And if that's the case, and if you want VTubing to be more mainstream and accepted by the community, here we have a very large creator who, from most looks of it, right, did a VTuber debut with fun intention without mocking or making fun of VTubers in any way and paid everybody involved fairly from what it looks like. Isn't that like a great way to then normalize it and ensure that we don't get more hates in the community? Like I'm not wording this well at all, but I hope you get my point, right? Basically, my point is like, if you want VTubing to be more mainstream and you want VTubers to receive less hate for doing what they're doing, then I think Ludwig respectfully debuting as a VTuber model as part of a joke bet with a friend is a great way to make it more mainstream. And if you would, I guess, like to gatekeep VTubing, and the thing about gatekeeping, again, is if you gatekeep a community, that community will receive hate because it is much more niche and much more gatekept. That's just kind of how it's going to happen. So Anyways, that's the rundown. But I think his debut as a VTuber seems very wholesome, seems very sweet, and it seemed like everybody had fun along the way and everybody was paid fairly along the way. And if he doesn't choose to be a VTuber in the future, I mean, hey, that's his prerogative. He can do whatever he wants.